Let's get started this evening. For those watching tonight's meeting virtually, the meeting is available to live stream via the Park District website. All information about Park District meetings can be found at winpark.org under the Park District Info tab by selecting Board Meetings plus Videos. Public comment is accepted in person. A link to the video and audio will be posted immediately following this evening's meeting. To improve the sound while listening to the meeting, please turn up the volume on your computer and turn up the volume on the website. The meeting packet for tonight's meeting is located on the website. For those attending tonight's meeting, the emergency exits from the room are the door behind you or through the foyer. To improve the quality of the sound, there is a boom microphone directed towards the commissioners. The microphone likely will pick up additional audience noise and sidebar conversations. If it's difficult to hear, please feel free to move to the front row. This is a business meeting, not a sporting event. The board asks for your cooperation to maintain decorum. There's no clapping or booing. Please be considerate and refrain from interrupting board members and other speakers. We're a community coming together to discuss difficult issues in a civil and respectful fashion. Denise, can I have the opening roll call?
Commissioner James?
Here.
Commissioner Lesson?
Here.
Commissioner Rapp? Here. Commissioner Root?
Present.
Commissioner Tyson?
Here.
Commissioner Hemmings is absent. Commissioner Kodo?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Shannon, would you like to make the public announcements?
Absolutely. So we're looking forward to tomorrow afternoon in the Pumpkin in the Woods event at Hubbard Woods Park at 4 p.m. This annual event is fun for the family with a costume contest, carnival games, and bounce houses. Also, the Plan Winnetka Parks Open House will be held Monday, October 28th from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Community House. We need your input to develop the comprehensive master plan. The event is open to all residents, including kids. There will be a coloring station and snacks for the children to keep them occupied while residents can share ideas and provide feedback to shape the strategic vision of the Winnetka Park District. Finally, the Winnetka Park District will receive the Best of the Best Award for Intergovernmental Cooperation from the Illinois Association of Park Districts tomorrow at an awards gala. This honor recognizes the collaborative efforts between the Winnetka Park District and the Village of Winnetka in creation of the underground stormwater storage system beneath the Winnetka Golf Club.
Thank you very much. Item number 1.4. Are there any requests for changes or additions to the agenda? Yes?
Just to relocate my comments to the appropriate section.
Sure. Where do you want them to go?
Tell me where you want.
Well, it's fine.
Under Eldred's intent.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Moving item 4.2 to 5.4. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the October 24th agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. This is your opportunity to address the board on any issue. When called upon, please come to the center position in front of the commissioners and stand at the podium. Speak loudly or into the microphone. State your name for the record and speak directly to the board. Based on the public comment policy described in the board policy manual and referenced in Public Access Counselor Opinion 2024 PAC 81900, guests may present public comment for no longer than 3 minutes after being recognized. If you prefer to share your comments in writing this evening, you may do so by leaving them with a member of the Park District staff. Please note that we do not respond to public comment. However, as we work through the meeting and commissioner comments, your issue may be addressed. Please raise your hand if you'd like to make a public comment. Okay. We'll work from left to right. Second row on the end.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, we did. Ladies go first.
Usually ladies first.
That's all right, I'm good.
Evening. My name is Robert Smith. I'm the ex-executive director of the Winnetka Park District. I retired back in 2017, and I served not only the director's position, but the superintendent of parks positions with a total of 14 years of service. With me tonight is Libby Baker. Many of you know her. She's also a retiree, and dialed in by video is Mary Chaveni, who is our communications specialist. And we were notified that as retirees, 3 of, we guess, 5 people that have been notified back in January by HR, Beth. And, it seems like we're going to lose access to a component of our COBRA health insurance, and that's the health reimbursement account that's partially funded by the district and partially paid for by the insured, the beneficiary, that up to $500 to $5,000, depending if you're a family or so. The issue at hand, and many of you got a letter that we sent to the board. The 3 of us signed it and wanted to bring this issue to the board for consideration. We tried working through staff to understand the genesis of where this came from, this decision, after 21 years of being practice at the district. And we really didn't get a satisfactory answer other than it was an expenditure of funds that the staff was not allowed to do, which tells me it's got to come to a board position and decision. What's this decision based on? Well, we find out that there's no policy driving this decision. The best I can ascertain is that it was a unilateral decision from staff without consideration of the board and the policies of the district. And to be fair to Shannon, she kind of inherited this midstream. She came on board after this decision was made. As we started to spend more time, we got more questions. Attorneys became involved. So I'm sure your attorney's already given you the background of the issues and their analysis of it, but we weren't privy to it, attorney-client privilege. So our ask tonight was, in part of our letter, is to continue the benefits as we've exercised them and we understood upon our retirement until we age out at 65. I look at it this way: if I was put my director's hat on for a second, I'd have to come to the board with some recommendations. And I kind of drill it down to 3 or 4, basically. The status quo as we operated for the past 21 years. Option 2, cut the retirees off at the knees. Dig in, and I guess we just got to take it as retirees. But
Please wrap
also,
up your comments. Your time is over.
I'm sorry?
Please wrap up your comments.
Absolutely. The third is probably, you eliminate the HRA for all staff and retirees. But I think the third is adopting a policy that allows everybody to get to where they want to get to in the district, phasing out of this HRA policy that's currently in place, putting in a policy that addresses this question. It should have never come up, but addresses
Please
it.
wrap up your comments, sir.
Address it now, and allows us to age out of the system who's already in the system before new retirees come in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the second row who would like to make a public comment?
Hello, thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Libby Baker, also a former employee and current retiree of the Winnetka Park District. I'm here to speak on the same issue. I'm not sure if you are aware or if you had read the letter that we sent. I'm just here to ask you to kindly give some consideration to the letter that we sent and to honor the commitment that was given to us as retirees upon our retirement to have this HRA as part of our benefits. I'm not going to go into the details of the letter. I'm sure you've read it, but I just want to share a little bit of information in our background. In my opinion, this decision was made without the knowledge of the board, and probably during the time that the Park District was without a director. So I don't know who all was involved in this decision. And there was no review of past practice and what had happened, or any review of the budget process and what went into the calculations. I'm not even sure if the director was even aware of this until we brought it to the attention of the Park District as we started asking some questions. Given that the Park District is self-insured, we as retirees, we contribute to the Park District because as a self-insured program, the number of employees helps determine what the premiums are. And so the 5, 6, 7 of us that may or may not be involved in this help lower the premiums for staff. Up until 2024, retirees paid more for their premiums than staff. And as we have discussed amongst ourselves, Mary, Bob, and I, we understand all of this, but I'm not sure if staff does. And so part of my ask of you is to talk with staff to get an understanding of how this change came about, what the numbers are that are involved in all of this. And again, just to ask you for your consideration of reinstating this benefit for us as employees. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Ann Wilder. The September 2024 financial statements that are provided in the packet show a September year-to-date operating surplus of $2,430,262 due to consistently higher than budgeted revenues and consistently lower than budgeted expenses. What are the updated expectations for revenues and expenses for the rest of the year, October, November, and December? Do you expect that the Winnetka Park District will end up with a $2.4 million surplus, or what exactly do you project for full year 2024? But, and this is the main point, if there are no projected 2024 actuals, how can you evaluate the 2025 proposed budget? Certainly the public can't. If the information is available, please point me to where it is, and if it isn't, will you provide it before the 2025 budget is passed? Also, the 2025 proposed budget shows a transfer from the general fund to the golf fund of $298,131. It's my understanding that the golf fund was established as an enterprise fund, and it's been a long-standing ironclad policy of the Winnetka Park District that enterprise funds pay their own ways and don't use tax dollars. The proposed 2025 transfer is in addition to several recent transfers from the general fund to the golf fund. All are contrary to policy and set a bad precedent. What measures has the Park District taken to ensure that golf will pay its own way and that there are no more such transfers? Is there any provision established that requires golf to pay back the general fund? And finally, can you provide a list of all the transfers to the golf fund from the general fund for the last 10 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the last? Oh, yes, please.
Two exhibits that I'm going to reference during the call.
Sure.
Copy for each of the board members. The first one is a complete attachments. This is the second.
Okay.
I forgot my glasses.
So I know, my name is Teresa Claybrick. I'm at 997 Vine Street. I'm a former Park District board member, commissioner. I know and appreciate that the Winnetka Park Board is committed to transparency. In recognition of that, I wanted to share a personal experience that occurred with the caucus process. I'm sharing this because my experience is not aligned with your vision of transparency, openness, and fairness, and it exposes a currently broken caucus process. I would also like my comments and articles shared to be included for public record. My goal in sharing this information with you is to show you that the caucus process no longer represents all voices in our community. It represents a very small group of people who use the bylaws to nominate candidates who align to their specific objectives while stifling community change that may be of interest to many community members. My experience involves my former position on the Parks Caucus. So I'll share a quick chronological history. First, I'd like to share an email that was sent on September 4th, 2024 from Katie Stevens to Colleen Root, collaborating on the messaging on why I should be kicked off the Parks Caucus. It seemed apparent the communication was intended to influence the vote on the candidates, driven by a group led by Katie Stevens that opposes some change that Winnetka supports. These efforts were not successful in getting me kicked off the caucus. Next, per our process of personally speaking with candidates, mutually available interviews are conducted and recorded. I'll speak to the recording aspect in a minute. Colleen Root was offered a time slot for interview that it was a time that I couldn't be available. I know firsthand that some of the other candidates were not offered that day when they received the outreach for the interview. Third, regarding my earlier point about recorded interviews, all interviews are to be recorded so that anyone who can't participate in person can watch the recording after the fact. Colleen Root's interview was not recorded, so I did not have the opportunity to view her responses, which inhibited my ability to provide input. Fourth, as a result of it not being recorded, Alex Ross, the Parks Caucus chair, requested a second interview from Colleen, which she denied, which is the second article I presented today. Due to the bylaws of the caucus, not interviewing a candidate eliminated my ability from voting.
Please wrap up your comments.
I think this is well-known portion of the bylaws. My vote was therefore eliminated from the caucus process. Last, the Park District needs to know that the censure was deemed a personal issue between Mr. James and Ms. Root, and was therefore not considered when evaluating Ms. Root's candidacy for continuation on the Park Board.
Please
I'm
wrap up your
sorry
comments.
to all Park Board members, as the 5-2 voice and vote from the board meant nothing. I feel this process deliberately eliminated my vote because I represented a voice who would have questioned about the candidacy, and thus serve as a barrier to specific desired outcomes to get somebody elected.
Please
This-
wrap up your comments. Your time is up.
Can I have your time, please?
We don't have that.
I will in 1 second. Our process in place to empower all voices to be heard in the community. This experience demonstrates that the caucus process no longer represents all voices in the community. Rather, it represents a small group of people who use the bylaws to nominate the candidates who align to their objectives of eliminating progress in Winnetka.
Please wrap up your comments.
And that stops all of our community interests. Change is needed. The caucus is broken, and it doesn't represent Winnetka.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the last row who would like to speak? Oh, did Susie raise her hand? Please, please. Please.
Okay, my comments are short. They're just a yellow sticky. I'm Susie Schreiber, former Park District Commissioner. I am very concerned about the short notice of the October 24th public survey outreach meeting that you're holding at the Winnetka Community House. 1 week jammed in with all of the other things and the elections coming up and Halloween. I mean, come on, the national holiday for candy in the United States. It's really hard to get all of your people everywhere in 1 week's notice. So it's just a concern of mine that you're not giving proper lead time, and you can't expect everybody to be represented at the pumpkins or the farmers market events, which is good that you're at. I mean, I'm not against that, but I think you need to be a little more thoughtful in your planning for public input. And my second point is that www.winpark.org/plan-Winnetka was not working last night. It said this site can't be reached and had something or other else underneath it that was similar to that statement. So would you please check that? Because you're referencing us to go there. And then the other, when we're at the farmer's market, and Christina has nice diagrams that she's talking about on the Centennial Elder projects, there's no handout that we can take home and study it a little more carefully, because as you know, there's a lot in it, and it's tiny, and you're at the farmer's market trying to get your corn and apples and all the other things. So having handouts, or at least put your current plan somewhere where we can find it. I looked for several hours over the last 2 days, and I couldn't find a really nice, simple, easy-to-reach diagram of your current plans for Elder and Centennial. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. Last row.
Hello. I had 2 comments, but now I have 3. It's interesting. I was watching the 3-minute clock, and I was watching the, shall we say, level of interruption that was addressed to the speakers, and I noticed how much more respectful and quiet those interruptions were, and how the time seemed to be longer, and those speakers were given more opportunity to speak than perhaps when someone else spoke, and every 4 seconds, a very loud, "Your time is up," was uttered into the microphone. It's an interesting statement on how justly the 3-minute time rule is applied here. So the reason I wanted to stop by today, first, I was at the zoning meeting, and there was a statement made that the Animal and Rabies Control Board had essentially approved a off-leash dog park with a 3-sided fence using the lake as a 4th side. And I've now seen those emails, and I don't think that's what they say. And more importantly, I've reached out to the Animal Rabies Control Board, the administrator there, to ask for clarification, because there is no process within their ordinance that allows them to grant any sort of variance. And I think it's troubling that that would be misrepresented to the village zoning board. I think until you guys have an actual official and ordinance approved statement that a 3-sided fence is okay and is comports with their requirements, should avoid making statements that could be false. And then the other thing is that I have now been here at least 3 times, and I have asked 3 times for this board to provide an answer on what dormant means as it relates to the land swap, what the board would intend to do if the other party demanded that the transaction be terminated or completed, why the park district is choosing not to terminate this, how this decision makes everything else that the board does regarding the Centennial and Elder Beaches uncertain, because there is no clear thing. And that's been 3 times. This is now the 4th time. Now I know you don't have to answer me today, but I believe that as a resident, a taxpayer of the state of Illinois, the country of the United States, I, like everyone else, has the right to know what the park district plans to do. If someone comes forward and says, we want to end this, we want to complete this land swap, to say it's dormant and to move on as if everything is okay does a disservice to the residents here. It's just wrong. And so this is my 4th time. Thank you. I'm going to only be 10 more seconds. This is my 4th time. I don't expect an answer tonight, but I would expect that someone would give an answer what we're going to do if he comes up by asking for the land swap to occur by the next meeting. I think it's appropriate.
Thank you. there anybody else? Raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay. I think that brings us to a close of public comment. Item number 3 is the consent agenda. Without objection or request for removal of any specific item from the consent agenda for individual consideration, we will act on the following items with a single vote. 3.1 regular meeting minutes, September 26, 2024. 3.2 special meeting minutes, October 10th, 2024. 3.3 September financials, 2024. 3.4 vouchers in the amount of $834,919.21. 3.5 Board of Commissioners meeting dates for 2025, and 3.6 Hap Road Corridor Improvements, Temporary Construction Easement, and finally 3.7 Delegate Selection for Annual Business Meeting of Illinois Association of Park Districts. Does anyone wish to have any item removed from the consent agenda? Yes.
I have a comment about the delegate to the IPD conference, and it's just a statement. I don't need to have it removed. I don't know when you want it.
You want to make it right now?
I think it's wonderful that our executive director is proposed to be our delegate. It was 3 years ago when I first brought to the attention of this board that the annual conference was a wonderful opportunity for commissioners to meet other commissioners throughout the state. And also that IAPD, the annual meeting, typically was one where a commissioner serves as a delegate and votes. And so I don't care one way or the other, but again, each year I have suggested that it would be great if, as commissioners, we could collaborate and go as so many other park districts do. And so, again, I have no problem with our wonderful executive director being the delegate, but I think also it would be good to have a commissioner presence. So that's just my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
That's a roll call vote, Denise.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Root?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner Koto?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, presentations. Fiscal year 2025 proposed budget presentation. Jim Crocker.
Thank you, Commissioner Cotto. Tonight, we are going to present the second of our 3 parts of the 2025 proposed budget for the Winnetka Park District. We are going to tonight talk about our corporate administrative fund, our garage maintenance, our parks maintenance, as well as the golf fund and our non-operating accounts and major capital accounts. So, a few highlights to note. For 2025, we are combining the 100 and 200 funds into the 200 fund. The two were largely overlapping, and it created some confusion. By combining these two, we are eliminating some duplication in accounts, which will help save us some money. We'll also present a clearer, more concise, and transparent budget for the board and the community as a whole. Pardon me. Operating revenues are projected to meet operating expenses despite an expected increase in medical insurance for 2025. We built the budget with an 11% increase built in for medical insurance. We actually expect that to come down. We should get final numbers from our broker within the next few weeks. We also are required to implement a Cook County Part-Time Paid Leave Act, where all seasonal employees will receive paid time off. That is a law. We cannot avoid that. Finally, our overall fund balance in the corporate fund does show a decrease, primarily to operating capitals in the parks maintenance, a $310,000 transfer out of the corporate fund to support capital projects. That $310,000 transfer is proceeds from the sale of Library Park a couple of years ago, which was earmarked for Elder and Centennial projects. It cannot be used for any other purpose, so we're transferring to that fund for 2025. And we have provisionally built in a $298,131 transfer out to ensure golf meets its 25% minimum fund reserve requirement. And I will touch on that in more detail a little bit later on in the presentation. Right, for 2025, we are proposing revenue of $4,701,682. That's predicated on a proposed 3.4% increase in the property tax levy. Operating expenses, we're projecting $4,309,810. Net operating income before capitals, therefore, would be $391,872. We're projecting $433,000 in capital expenses, primarily in the garage and parks maintenance areas. You'll see here, we have proposed $608,131 in transfers out of the corporate fund. That's the $310,000 transfer to support Elder and Centennial, and a $298,000 transfer to the golf fund, which again I will elaborate on in a few moments. Total expenses, $5,350,000, $5,359,41. Net fund income loss projected of $649,259. And in reserves, we were projecting $1,964,361, which is above the 25% threshold we are required to maintain per policy. Moving on, I'm going to talk about our marketing goals for 2025. We project filling an existing marketing vacancy that we did not fill this year. We plan to expand our digital footprint and our social media campaigns, enhancing digital and social media advertising. And we are going to once again start issuing a quarterly printed brochure for community use. We've received several requests to make it easier for the community to review and determine what sort of programming they would like to subscribe to. So that will drive up our printing and our postage costs in 2025. So here's our breakdown of our revenues. $4,194,030 is based on the property tax increase we're proposing for 2025. We do get some money from Cook County in replacement taxes. We're projecting less interest income in 2025 due to a weakening interest rate market. We do have some occasional miscellaneous income and donations in 2025, and then we do collect some parking revenue from New Trier High School for the use of our Elder Lane Beach parking lot in the fall and the spring. Right, our expenses. Salaries and wages are going up. We have a 4% cost of living adjustment for all staff, all administrative staff in this fund. The vacant marketing position, we're budgeting at $59,000. And the Cook County Part-Time Paid Leave Act, we're expecting a $68,000 hit to the budget based on that requirement. We also reallocated, when we combined the two funds, we reallocated some personnel salaries to make it clearer where their work was being done and where the costs should be associated. Once again, program and maintenance services here is going up due to the Cook County Part-Time Paid Leave Act and the anticipated increase in medical insurance. And the transfers out, this number here, $2,954,972, includes the Elder Centennial $310,000 line item, the line item for the golf fund, and a transfer out to the Parks Maintenance Fund to offset their expenses. We'll get to that here in just a moment as well. Okay, are there any questions so far from the board? Yes, Cindy.
I just wanted to put out a question that I had asked in my session regarding the 4% cost of living adjustment. We had approved, again, I think the Park District actually has had a long-standing approach of the merit-based compensation. And so I am a little concerned seeing that represented as a cost of living adjustment. I have seen it positioned as far back as 2015 as a 4% overall increase, but the actual increase per employee will be based on merit, which is what GovHR had recommended. And so also in looking at other park districts, I'm just a little concerned that how we are kind of bucketing 4%, positioning it as guaranteed, that it is undermining the decision that we made with the merit increase protocols. So I have asked Edie Nizal to review what we have approved and, understand how that works. And also, I think that we need a little bit more transparency about how it's implemented, as well as any other planned bonus payments, because those were not part of the compensation payment or the salary and compensation study. So I just wanted to put that out for people. I don't need an immediate answer now, but I wanted the question to be out there and in the open and transparent.
Commissioner, if I could. So in looking back at the meeting from August 2023, and my apologies for not being here at the time. So trying to go back and look at past approvals and that sort of thing. And I have not watched the meeting, but I looked at the meeting minutes and looked at the study. And the board did approve all recommendations that were in the study, which included the open merit-based plan, which would indicate that. So that was my mistake to include this on here as COLA. My thought process was if having two merit-based systems was a little confusing on my part, and that's my fault for trying to figure that out and looking at the merit-based system on how to make it fair across all departments, because all departments were doing it differently, in trying to figure out the best way to do that for all employees in an equitable fashion. I think for the purposes of budget, the percentage, I think, is accurate for what we would be looking for, whether that's, merit-based. But then there's also the accounting of bonuses that is also has been budgeted in the district on how those are relayed as well. And I haven't really come to a conclusion on how that should be addressed. However, it has been left in the budget for budgeting purposes at this time. Does that kind of answer a little bit?
Yes, thank you for your research, and I understand that's good for where we are now. We'll be approving the budget in December,
Yes.
So I think it should be part of an ongoing discussion
Sure.
so that there's more shared understanding about how exactly those things are being implemented.
Sure, absolutely.
So, thank you.
Might I just carry Cynthia's thoughts a bit forward and say I think it would be very, very helpful to see how other park districts handle these issues, as it appears that in the last 2 years we have become an extremely, as we should because we value our employees, but an extremely highly compensated district. So I'm kind of curious to know particularly what our neighboring districts are doing and how they're handling particularly bonuses. Thank you.
So what I would say, I know that we regularly speak with our neighboring park districts and those along the North Shore, and I know in a passing by conversation I had with a number of directors, it's anywhere from it's just a cost of living increase, or it's just a merit increase, or it's a combination of the two. So there's really no one way that any park district is doing it. It's just what works best for that organization.
I would also just add one thing, that compensation is personal time, it's vacation days, it's bereavement time, it's all of the policies together that roll up into a total comp number. So if you try and look at only an increase, a merit increase, a COLA increase, without comparing our package in total, it gives an incomplete comparison.
I'd also like to add that we did do a comprehensive review just last year, and with outside consulting assistance, and determined that in fact the Winnetka Park District was below in many respects our peers, and we adjusted and made corresponding adjustments to come up into the upper middle. So I don't think that the suggestion that we're overpaying people is appropriate. In fact, we were underpaying people until we made certain corrections.
Commissioner Root, did you want to make another comment?
No, just,
Into the microphone, please.
Sorry.
Sideways.
Commissioner Root, did you want to make another comment?
no, I just was somewhat surprised at the bonuses that were paid out last year. And again, this is before your tenure, Executive Director. And so I'm trying to get an understanding on how that occurred, because that did not come to the board. And I looked at, for example, our village, what they do, they have a pot of money that they then, a finite number of money that then they will allocate to various management positions, again, based on merit. And so I'm just trying to understand this and how this happened and what our policy is going to be going forward. Thank you.
The bonuses that were paid were operational target bonuses. So if operational targets were achieved, bonuses were paid. And we did look at that program here at the board. Commissioner Rapp.
I'd love to see the operational targets associated with those, because I don't recall that. I do think that summary that Beth shared with the salary compensation study when we adopted the 60% pay philosophy, I think a refresh of that, to see where we are might be helpful. So it might be something to consider further.
Could you expand on what I presented? 'Cause
I don't recall what you mean by summary.
I could email it if you
Perfect.
prefer.
Jim, please continue.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Greg Fields, who can go into more detail about the garage maintenance and park maintenance budgets for 2025.
Commissioner Cotto, can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
Sorry, just to categorically summarize our employees as being highly compensated employees is factually wrong. That is an incorrect statement. It's not true. In all of our sessions, we have reviewed and compared compensation of comparable park districts, and we've had multiple sessions on it. So I would refrain from saying something that's categorically false in a budget session like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about the highlights of the 300 garage maintenance expenses. Looking at kind of the highlights here, salaries and wages. Again, it takes into consideration the 4%, but also some overtime increases and some reallocation in the supplies area. As you can see, that variance of negative 17%. That's due to some expenses that were made this year, primarily lubricants that will carry us through the 2025 season. Repair and maintenance, 25% increase or variance. Again, if you look at the dollar amount, it's $1,150. Again, those have ebbs and flows from year to year. Nothing out of the ordinary there. And then one of the big outliers for program and maintenance services, the inverse can be seen in the 400 account, whereas we reallocated some dollars or some medical that is now taken up on the 400 account, so you'll see the positive on that. Salaries and wages, and salaries and wages. Wages and salaries reflect the 4% increase. Reallocation salary expenses for 2 employees consolidated as part of the budgeting process. Repairs and maintenance. A projected increase due to the cycle of repair costs. Some of the garage capitals that we've got coming up over at the Golf Maintenance Center is fuel pump upgrades, as well as a cathodic protection system replacement. That's a system that protects our underground storage tanks from corrosion, so that's money well spent, seeing as we're in the floodplain, so if we ever had to replace those tanks, they would have to go above ground. So that they did test well, so we want to keep those working. Moving on to the 400 parks maintenance, just a quick highlight of 2024 highlights. Of course, we have completed lots of small projects as identified in the long-range plan. Our team has worked hard at keeping value engineering in mind when it comes to cost savings. Hap Road Playground being a good example of that. We were able to reduce costs through demolition and deconstruction of the playground equipment over on that site. And then our team is also working with a new firm on woodland and bluff management. So we went out and got quotes from different vendors on that, and that is going well. We're actually wrapping that up in the next coming weeks. 2025 highlights. Again, the purchases of trucks. It seems like a never-ending saga. We should be getting 2 this season. 2 are going to roll over into next season. But it's looking more promising as we're finding more vendors are having better availability for that. Planning and implementation of the long-range plan, projects district-wide, and then another bigger one is playground renovations and resurfacing. So that's in reference to Hubbard Woods Port in Place surfacing, which it gets a lot of foot traffic, and we've done as much patching as possible at that site, so we're looking to have a complete replacement of the Port in Place surfacing at that location. 2025, looking forward, continue to expand our efforts of in-house services, like I mentioned, with value engineering. That's always something we look for opportunities for. Increasing awareness with new communication efforts. So we'd like to make sure that we're keeping the community as involved with our projects during and before they come up. And we'll work with our marketing team to make sure that that's communicated clearly. Maintains high standards of service throughout the community and investing in the future. Looking at the 400 parks expenses, again with salaries and wages, part of that is the 4%. Also, there's overtime and holiday pay for parks, which can drive that number. And supplies is pretty much boilerplate. Repairs and maintenance is a negative 17 variance due to an expense of a truck bed for our Stakeside truck this year for I believe it was around $15,000 we budgeted, and that we won't need next year. So that explains that. And again, here's in program and maintenance services, you see the inverse from 300 is medical reallocation in that sector. Reasons for variances, the big ones, program and maintenance services anticipated 11% rise in healthcare, as Jim pointed out earlier, cost for our 8 full-time employees, as well as an additional $38,000 for fertilizer, which is being driven because of a couple new fields that now have irrigation that we can actually put more product down on to better the product. Salaries and wages, part-time hourly wage increase, and allocation distribution similar to the previous slides. Any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. A real quick update with the capitals. 2025, our continuation of paving of the Green Bay Trail and Crow Island Woods Drive. And then equipment replacement, that would be the 2 rolled over trucks, just as a quick recap, and a trailer for the mowing crew, courts resurfacing for Hap Road Sports Court, and then property surveys for Crown Hubbard Woods Park and Skokie Playfield. Questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank
Each
you.
of the commissioners has had a chance to go over these budgets in sessions throughout the course of the week. So this is now our second set of sessions, and usually they take between an hour and 2 hours. So that's why the commissioners don't have questions.
Thank you, Greg. I'm going to move on now to major capitals, the 3700 fund. Much of this will reiterate what we discussed 2 weeks ago, so this will be a nice refresher for the capital projects planned in 2025. It's important to remember that most 2025 capital expenditures are budgeted in their respective funds and organizations, as they tend to include repairs and replacements of existing equipment or facilities. As we pointed out 2 weeks ago, the 2025 budget for Elder Lane and Centennial Shoreline Restoration is $15,806,354, but we do not anticipate spending all of that money in 2025. We'll be spending that over the next 3 years, 25, 26, and 27. And the major capital fund includes a $3 million pledge to donation towards lakefront improvement projects. So the important point to note here, the 2025 budget includes $18,771,354 in capital projects, of which $15,806,000 is that Elder and Centennial Shoreline Restoration budget line. And here is an overview for what we plan for 2025. We are carrying over $4,757,177. We're expecting $4 million in revenue this year to this fund. That includes the $3 million pledge donation I referenced a few moments ago, $310,000 transfer from the corporate fund, which we discussed earlier this evening, and a $690,000 transfer from the recreation fund to begin to supplement the major capital fund for Elder and Centennial projects. Are there any questions regarding the major capital fund? Yes, Commissioner Root.
Coming back to the 15.8 million, can you advise what you anticipate to spend in 2025? I had asked this question during our session, and Mr. Catullis was kind enough to join us. But I think for the benefit of the public, I think they should have an idea of what best case we think we may be spending in 2025 for Elder Centennial.
Costa, if you don't mind being put on the hot seat, I'd like you to kind of touch on this. You know this in more detail than I do.
Of course, Jim, thank you. Commissioner Root, per your question and what we've talked about previously, this is an anticipated best guess based on where things are at with permitting and everything else. So please, just understand that. Right now, with permitting costs and what we were expend, I believe we talked about potentially upwards of $1 million roughly being spent in 2025 projected. But as we've discussed previously, to properly budget for the project and approve a project through the bid process, you want to make sure any contracts that are executed in full with payment to be, or our funds to be budgeted towards that and approved for that contract. So that was one of the drivers for that as well.
Thank you. No.
I have a concern in terms of allocating that money directly to a project ahead of that sum entirely for the project, because we've had one meeting. I feel like we probably have another 10 between all the different agencies to go and the boards, and when we look at our plan. And so it seems like we're going to spend $1 million in the next year. I'm not sure when our
current estimated time to go out to bid is on this particular project, and if we are moving ahead with the designs that we have or getting a little bit further down the track with the agencies and different steps in the permitting process, but I definitely feel like it's premature to be moving all that money now in December. It does seem like what other park districts have done is they have moved money systematically into capital funds that is in capital, and that, you know, through the comprehensive plan, we will be probably getting more feedback for more projects than we can possibly do. And I think that, you know, depending on the timing, you know, it might make sense to put this money in capital, and then when we get to a point where we're, you know, to the point of having the $3 million donation, or we're to a point where we're going out to bid, that then we as a board can revisit, okay, are we ready to move all that money in? My concern is that we could end up with those funds stranded in a particular project. I think that it is not as easy to move funds between projects as had been communicated. I think it requires some other things, and I'm just sensitive to being in positions where we have assets that are not being able to use, either financial or physical.
I just want to say that this is a budgeting exercise, and it's important to identify the correct total scope of the project so that we keep that in the front of our minds. We are not yet talking about moving or harvesting excess reserves. We're now in the budgeting process. So this is a plan. As we look forward, the actual expenditures will happen at the correct pace, but it's important to put, as we have been asked many, many times, for the total dollar amount, it's important to put that number out there to be transparent.
I respect the judgment of staff. I support Christina's comments. We need to identify the dollar amount that we're allocating, budgeting for Elder and Centennial, so as not to confuse the reserves that we have after that allocation. Park District has done a very good job of budgeting its operating capitals and its long-term capitals, and it's reflected in the budget, which has adequate resources for Elder and Centennial and the other initiatives. So again, I support what Christina said. This is a budgeting exercise, and we're taking staff's recommendation to properly allocate the budgeted amount so that it doesn't get confused with resources available for other lower priorities.
Adam, can you just clarify, if we budget this money in this project, what the process is to then, you know, reallocate it? Like, let's say this gets delayed for some reason that we cannot foresee, and then we're like, okay, we want to reprioritize or change, or it gets slowed in the permit process further, whatever. What is the process by which we reallocate those funds once we're allocated? Because I've read, you know, everyone has said, oh, you can reallocate them, but I had read something that there was a different voting procedure for reallocating them, which is what makes me nervous about prematurely allocating everything. You know, we have a lot of risk with the donation, we have a lot of other hurdles to clear. So can you just opine on exactly what that procedure is to move money once it's already been allocated on a project-specific basis?
So I want to emphasize that there's a difference between the budget and the appropriation ordinance. The budget is a financial document that describes your business plan, and the appropriation ordinance is a legal document that sets the maximum amount of money you can spend. The Park District Code and state law place limitations on changing your appropriation ordinance. State law does not regulate how you budget money. That is an internal policy decision. And so I don't know all the details about how the different capital items are committed or assigned or reserved, but if they're all under the capital fund and there's sub-departments of the capital fund for lakefront improvements and paving and vehicles and whatever else. It is not difficult to reallocate within the same fund. Reallocating money within the same fund in the appropriation ordinance can be done at some parts of the year with a simple majority vote, and depending on the amount being reallocated, can be done with a 2/3 vote. But again, that's the appropriation ordinance, not the budget. The budget is, again, a local policy choice.
Can you just circulate the specifics around the appropriations ordinance then, so that we can all see in writing what that looks like depending on the categorizations?
Sure, I'm happy to. In case anyone's listening and wants to look it up, the rules for transferring money within the appropriation ordinance during the course of the year is in section 4-4 of the Park District Code, and I can circulate that.
Thank you.
Hey,
Did you, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Just-
Yes, of course.
Just one question. Again, with the recommendation of Commissioner Rapp, one of the reasons I asked, what do we anticipate will be best case spent on Elder Centennial? And it is certainly a number far less than 15.8 million. I think the Park District has done a very good job of telling the public what they anticipate the cost of this project will be. Why would it be a problem to simply have the balance, let's say $13 million, in the capital fund, but not tied specifically to this project? Why would that be an issue?
Well, to answer your question, Commissioner, and touching on what Adam said a few moments ago, if we allocate the money in the capital fund, right, and we change the priorities of the capital projects, we can reallocate the money within the capital fund without too much difficulty. I think the question here is confusing in that there's a thought that we might take the money out of the capital fund and put it into our operating budgets. We have no intention of doing that. But you can't spend money unless you budget for it first, right? We have to have the money there. And it also helps with the bidding process, right? Contractors need to know how much money we have available when we go out for bid. So it's a benefit to us to put those numbers in our budget and plan for it going forward. I don't know if that completely answers your question, but hopefully it clarifies the picture for you a little bit.
I guess one of my concerns, and I go back to Commissioner Rapp's comment, we are at the very beginning of the permitting process, and it has been my experience with regulators and permitting processes that a project can change. There can be major alterations that are required by the agencies with oversight. And so I guess that's why I'm saying, is there a way to take this large pot, have it footnoted that, upon permits and contract, but not identified to this project at this time, because we are in a very early phase of regulatory oversight. Thank you.
So the correct way to do a budget when you have a capital project that is a majority position of the board, that has been approved, that we are in the permitting process, is to put the total dollar amount in the budget. If you don't spend it all in one year, you roll that amount as long as the project continues to be viable. That's the honest way to do it. That sets the dollar amount out to the public.
And for the past 3 years, as I've worked on the budget, there's been many times we've allocated money for capital projects that did not get spent.
They did not materialize,
Right.
correct.
So this would be no different in that respect.
Why don't we continue?
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm now going to move on to our non-operating funds. These are our special funds. The first is special recreation. The NSSRA board originally approached us and requested a 12% increase in our annual membership contribution. Executive Director Nassau and others managed to negotiate that down to a 7% increase. So our budget proposal for this year includes a 7% increase in our participating membership contribution. However, NSSRA projects a slight decrease in the 2025 inclusion cost and participation of members in our parks. So our overall projected increase for 2025 is 6%. We did budget additional capital money in the Special Recreation Fund for potential ADA components of the Elder and Centennial projects, and we'll get to that here in just a moment. So we're budgeting $332,986 in revenue based on that would be property tax revenue. Our operating expenses, including the 7% increase in the inclusion costs, come to $233,265. It's a net operating income of $99,721. However, we budgeted $200,000 in potential capital expenses for, once again, ADA components or features of the Elder and Centennial projects. So we are budgeting a $100,000 net loss to this fund in 2025. However, we have significant beginning reserves. We have over a year and a half of reserves compared to what the annual operating expenses are. And the challenge here is if we continue to build those reserves, we cannot use them for any other purpose other than special recreation. So this is a strategic decision to manage our reserves and appropriate other property tax dollars to the corporate fund where they can be more flexible and more versatile for the park district to use. So we project having ending reserves of $276,391, which is well above the 25% minimum we are required to maintain per park district policy. Moving on to workers' compensation. We are projecting a decrease in both revenue and operating expenses for 2025. This is due partly to the fact that we no longer have Park District golf employees working for us. So Perderma lowered this number for us, so we're budgeting for this appropriately. Moving on to IMRF and FICA, this is the retirement fund dollars. The IMRF rate for 2025 will be 8.62%. That's a slight decrease from 8.7% for 2024. And FICA is the standard 7.65% based on federal government regulations. Fund overview, we are budgeting $795,797 in property tax revenue for this fund. We're projecting $869,797 in expenses. That's a net loss of $74,000. Once again, we're doing a strategic drawdown on our beginning reserves, so we don't have, so we're not top heavy with reserves in this fund. Once again, we cannot use this money for any other purpose. So we are projecting ending reserves of $619,249, which again is well above the $217,000 25% minimum we are required to maintain. Moving on to the audit fund. Again, this is a specialized fund solely built for the purposes of the annual audit. We are budgeting $32,000 for the 2024 audit to be conducted in 2025. We plan the revenues to equal the expenses, so there will be no net change to this fund. And we are, again, once again, above the 25% minimum fund reserve requirement for this fund. Moving on to liability insurance fund. Unemployment expenses are expected to decrease. Once again, we're no longer paying for previously terminated Park District golf employees, but our overall insurance costs from our insurance broker will increase about $18,000, $18,578, approximately 10%. So once again, we're budgeting $193,970 in revenue. We're projecting expenses at $205,692. That's a net loss of $11,722. Again, we are drawing down on existing reserves to cover the difference. We'll be left with $73,846 in reserves, which is again above the 25% minimum threshold that we're required to maintain. And the final special fund is our debt service fund, Fund 3600. And this is straightforward. We are budgeting the revenue to cover the expenses, so we are projecting no net change to this fund. And once again, the ending reserves will be above the 25% minimum reserve threshold we're required to maintain. Right. That ends this portion of the Park District's budget presentation. I want to move on now to the Golf Fund.
Excellent.
Okay. This has been a rather dynamic process over the past 2 weeks, so I'm going to give you a little background as we get into this here. When we met with a number of you earlier this week, we did not at the time project a transfer from the corporate fund into the golf fund. A little background here, the Kemper Sports Management accounting system is different from ours. So when they provided their budget to us, we have to map their requests over to our system. As we were working on this last week, the mapping was incomplete. So thanks to an astute observation by Commissioner Root here, we went back with Kemper and revisited their numbers, and in doing so we discovered that incomplete mapping process. When we finally mapped over all the expenses, we discovered that in fact the budget they were proposing did not meet the minimum 25% threshold we are required to maintain. So we have had conversations with Kemper. They are going back and revisiting their budget requests, both revenues and the expenses. And we've had conversations with them about this. For the moment, and it's important to keep in mind that this is a proposal, this is not set in stone, we are currently plugging in a $298,131 transfer from the corporate fund to ensure that the golf fund meets the ending reserve requirement of $660,353, which is based on 25% of the proposed operating expenses for 2025. We do expect these numbers to change, and we will certainly come back to the board at our next meeting on November 14th with updated numbers from Kemper. And as we present the other enterprise funds, we will provide updated information for you on the golf fund. So again, we expect the revenue and the operating expense numbers to change somewhat. The capital numbers may or may not change. Again, Kemper is working on this. We've met with them a number of times, and they're being very diligent about going through this to make sure we hit this number and to minimize, to the extent possible, this transfer from the corporate fund. In the meantime, the revenues that they are projecting so far are based primarily on user fees. And they're projecting a significant increase because the course will be open for a full year rather than a partial year. Pro shop revenue is expected to go up, and miscellaneous income is expected to go up too. And it's important to note, food and beverage revenue is included in our miscellaneous income category here. Our accounting software does not specify food and beverage, so it's included in the miscellaneous line item here. Expenses, once again, salaries and wages, supplies, and other consumable categories are going up because the course will be open for a full year rather than a partial year. Total operating expenses for course play is projected right now at $1,556,000. We expect this to change based on the comments I made a few moments ago. Course maintenance, once again, these costs are projected to go up based on the fact the course will be open for a full year rather than a partial year. Projected expenses, $1,084,678. And the capitals, for 2025, we've currently budgeted $8 million in clubhouse furniture, $12 million in digital locks for the doors, $7,500 for new trash receptacles, $30,000 for upgrades to the kitchen and appliances, $25,000 for a new range ball dispenser, $22,000 for cart barn fire panel, and $95,000 for a cart barn fire suppression system. Those are must-haves, not want-to-haves. So we're building that in 2025 budget. Course maintenance 2025, we're budgeting $24,000 for the 18th-hole pond fountain for water movement. And on-course water fountain replacement throughout the course, $35,000. And $10,000 for attachments to the machinery for course maintenance, and $50,000 for a John Deere mower. That mower was actually ordered previous years, but is expected to be delivered in 2025, so we expect to incur the expenditure in 2025. And that is the end of the golf presentation. Are there any questions so far?
Right.
I wanted to bring up Kemper Sports because I know that they have some additional information that they would like to provide in regards to the budget that I think would be helpful before we get into questions. Absolutely.
I want to take this time to address Ann Wilder's comment and question earlier in the meeting. While it is not appropriate to take funds away from golf, being an enterprise fund, and allocate it to a different enterprise fund, it is okay for the Park District to fund from general and rec into the golf course. To answer more specifically, for 10 years preceding COVID, the golf course operated at a loss of greater than, on average, greater than $300,000 per year. The golf course incurred those losses for three primary reasons. First, the golf course was flat as a pancake. It would get inundated with rain. It would close. It wouldn't dry out. So we lost revenue early in the season due to heavy spring rains. In addition, because of the soggy conditions, we lost cart revenue because even though the course might reopen, we couldn't use carts on the wet course, so we lost money that way. And third, later on in this, I'm going to add four. So in third, later in the summer, a very small pond from which to draw irrigation water, so we would spend upwards of $100,000 on potable water at retail rates purchased from the village of Winnetka. We also had to pay the village of Winnetka, if you believe it or not, a stormwater management fee. And let's see, finally, the course wasn't that good. So through the intergovernmental cooperation, which will receive an award tomorrow, we were able to solve multiple problems by working in collaboration with the village. By redesigning the golf course, we created 56 acre-feet of above-ground storage. 56 acre-feet of below-ground storage would cost on the order of $25 million if the village even had the land area to do it. So this was truly a win-win with found money. When we first evaluated the plans, it had a lot of underground storage and nothing on the 18-hole golf course. We collectively got together, took a harder look, found a much better solution that allowed us to address our golf course deficiencies by raising and crowning the fairways and introducing new drainage and a continuous cart path. We addressed two of the fundamental issues. The water gets off the course and the cart revenue can resume or can be done 100% of the time just by cart paths only. We also created a much larger lake, and the village and Strand Engineering, through some very clever engineering, gave us the ability to pump water out of the underground storage facility at Duke Childs into the new lake and into the irrigation. So we no longer have to buy potable water from the village, and we negotiated that because we're providing all the stormwater capacity for the village, we no longer pay stormwater management fees. And we have an exceptional new golf course, which has allowed us to boost play and boost revenue. So you'll hear from these guys in a moment how we're going to show positive returns and be able to fund golf course capitals or future capital investment. So this is truly a win-win. It's best management practices for the community. It's using stormwater for irrigation. It's all the good things, and it's a testament to the intergovernmental cooperation. So
excellent.
Now we'll turn it over.
We'll turn it over. Sorry, this is for us. Miles Tucker, thank you, from Kemper, and Vince Suarez.
Good evening.
No pressure, gentlemen, you're going to show us how we're going to make money.
So we're going to touch really quickly on September and then go into the budget. So through September, as you have seen, we were named one of America's best golf courses under $100 by Golf.com and Golf Magazine. We currently have 72 juniors enrolled in our Discover Golf Fall programming. We've seen that participation grow and remain strong throughout the year. Expect that to continue growing in next year. And then we host the Winnetka Park Foundation outing and the Winnetka Open, which was an internal event that we ran alongside the men's club last month. So good participation in all of those, and we've seen strong participation across the board. Looking at our financials for September, the story here is in an OI coming in 115,000 head of budget at 308. We had just about 600 rounds over budget in September, bringing in an additional $85,000 in revenue. We did have some savings in payroll, operating expenses. We had some carryover from previous months that had been deferred into September. But again, in operating income, and then positive income for year to date of just over $500,000. So, okay, and then so looking at 2025, as Jim said, this is a work in progress. We do have some updates to make still. But our original proposal here, again, showing a net positive income, compared to what our projections are this year of negative 426,000. So we'll continue to grow on that. But a green fee increase of 1.5 million, and again, that's an increase in play. As Commissioner James mentioned, less unplayable days. This year we really would have only had one day that we potentially may have been closed. I think we actually would have been able to open in the afternoon that day. So as opposed to being closed for several days and then walking only after, as he mentioned, would have been able to be open nearly every day this year, and then would have had cart path only and carts available on those other days. And then, looking at operating expenses, we are budgeting an increase. Again, water is a huge help there to not have further increase. This year we've only had to use potable water twice. The most recent was a pump failure. We had a foreign object stuck in the pump. So aside from incidents like that, we shouldn't need any city water. So, and then, as Jim mentioned, capital of 318.5, again, bringing us to a positive NOI there. And then looking at user fees, so daily fees, again, work in progress here right now. Proposal, we are showing a moderate increase. This may change as we continue to look at ways to offset some of those transfers in. And then season pass rates. So season pass rates, having 7 different options, ranging from $2,400 for a 7-day full pass, which would include both golf courses, down to a junior-only pass for our par 3 golf course. And then, one of our big focuses for next year, our objectives and imperatives for next year. So quite a few. So driving revenue across all of our key business segments. So greens fees, carts fees, range, food and beverage, golf shop, and instruction. So we are showing positive increases in all of those. We'll be using our True Demand platform to ensure that we're maximizing our profitability throughout the week. We'll work on enhancing our stakeholder communications, working with key groups such as our men's club, our ladies league, our permanent tee times, our annual pass holders and golf outings, to help them grow as we welcome them back for the 2025 season. We've already had some good participation with the men's club, and have had communications with ladies leagues as well, and some outings. So seeing that demand already grow as we move into the off season here. We'll expand our marketing efforts to promote the golf course on all of our communication channels, and increase our outreach through the Park District as well. Create excitement beyond daily play. We will have some creative outings that we'll run. Winnetka Open was an example that we already did this year. We'll expand on that next year, as well as some leagues that we'll run in-house. And then maintain our exceptional customer service, continue to deliver best-in-class service, through our operational programs, and then promote Discover Golf. So, as I said, the program's already strong. We'll look to continue expanding that and drive the junior participation that we've already seen. Questions?
Commissioner Rea.
A small one. On your budget slide, when you say 2024 projections, is that your budget or is that like a year-end projection?
It's year-end for this year.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to note that.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Okay, do you want to? Sure. We did. We should leave it. We moved it, we should leave it. We're moving on to item number 5. Moving on to item number 5, unfinished business. We'll do all of the comments for 4.2 at 5.4. Declaring a board vacancy ordinance 2024-005. Shannon.
Okay, so hopefully third time's a charm. So this item, we are bringing back again with some recommended items that the board had looked at altering for this particular ordinance. That we had spoken about it before. We spoke about it on September 12th and then again on September 26th in regards to declaring a board vacancy. The previous ordinance number 505 that we assume may or may not have been approved back in 2007 or 2008. And cleaning that up, the thing that I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of as we looked at the different options within that ordinance, I pulled them out in the actual ordinance themselves as an option 1 and an option 2, since there was conversation on looking at if someone departed from a meeting, or there was also the suggestion of somebody being present for 75% of a meeting, whether that would constitute someone being in attendance or not being in attendance. So I included 2 different options for the board to look at on that particular topic, that there did not seem to be one way or the other that was preferred by the board to particularly look at. We did look at the current board members over the past year, and there is not much difference either way on what would be considered somebody being absent or not from the regular board meetings. And what I would say about option 2 in regards to that 75% item, that would require a little more administrative work to calculate that for every meeting, and one would not know during a meeting really whether or not they would be considered absent or not if they had to leave particularly for that meeting. So I'll hand it back over to President Cotto for any discussion.
Sure. So first we make a motion. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2024-005, repealing and reinstating the ordinance regarding the length of time A park commissioner may fail to attend meetings of the park board for such commissioner's office to be declared vacant, and providing a procedure for declaring such a vacancy, and by choosing option 1, option 2, or any other alternative for the last sentence of section 2.
So moved again.
Excellent, thank you. I may have a second.
Second.
Excellent, thank you. That's Warren. Now we can open it up to discussion. Any thoughts? We've discussed this on 2 prior occasions, so if there's any discussion, otherwise we can move straight to a vote between option 1 and option 2. Yes, Jeff?
I think option 2 seems cumbersome. I appreciate the point that Shannon brought up about additional work for staff to calculate that, and I think it was great to look back historically to see how each option would have impacted things over the past year. Let's keep it simple. Let's just go with option 1.
Okay. Any other comments? Commissioner Root?
In the spirit of keeping it simple, it seems to me that having either option 1 or option 2 become quite cumbersome. I would think that, in looking at other park district policy manuals, I have yet to find one that is this detailed. And one would think that, we could generally say, if you have a commissioner who misses 3 consecutive meetings in a row, or 6 in an annual period, that would be sufficient to move forward with a hearing to determine whether there was a need for a vacancy. I don't see the need for this very specific, almost Byzantine language. Let's keep it simple. Let's remove both.
Okay, I'd like to take a straw poll before we vote to make sure that we agree on the option that we're voting on. If you, as I go around the room, just tell me if you prefer option 1 or option 2 or nothing. Eric?
Option 1.
Okay. Cynthia?
I'm still thinking.
Okay. Commissioner Root, you're
No
neither of the
option,
above?
just consecutive
Okay.
days and then maximum.
Okay.
Option 1.
Option 1. Warren?
I'm really agnostic on this, not to 1 or none.
Okay. Cynthia?
What do you think?
I go last. I'm only allowed to go last.
I'd be fine, just as one would be with option 1 more of it.
Okay. I would prefer option 1. So,
Restate the motion.
I'm going to restate it. Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2024-005, repealing and reinstating the ordinance regarding the length of time a park commissioner may fail to attend meetings of the park board for such commissioner's office to be declared vacant, and providing a procedure for declaring such a vacancy, and by choosing option 1 for the last sentence of section 2. Option 1 is, if a commissioner departs from a meeting without giving 1 hour advance notice, written notice, to the board secretary that the commissioner may or will be departing, such commissioner will be deemed absent from such meeting regardless of how long the commissioner attended before departing, except in the case of an emergency.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Denise, that's a roll call vote.
Commissioner Lesson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp? Yes. Commissioner Root?
No.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Kodo?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you. Item 5.2, cleaning up the rest of the policy manual around this issue, declaring of board vacancy policy manual 4.12. Shannon.
Okay, so this item kind of coincides with the one that we previously did, but it updates the policy manual to indicate the appropriate ordinance number and reflect back to that document that was just adopted by the board.
Okay. May I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-09-26-01, updating Section 4.12 of the Policy Manual?
So moved. Second.
Excellent. Roll call.
Are we going to have discussion?
Oh, sure. Please, excuse me. Yes.
Okay.
I thought this was the easy one. Go ahead.
I actually view this one as potentially one of the most consequential votes that we will make as a board. This is kind of a pretty serious process in terms of handling resignations. And so I had some proposed word changes that I would like to make a motion to modify the vacancy policy, specifically in Section A. Upon acceptance of a resignation, the board president shall announce the vacancy and initiate the process to select a replacement. And then under Part C, the board shall open a call for nominations and applications from eligible members of the community when the board invites nominations from the public. Interested candidates must submit a statement of interest, qualifications, Cook County Statement of Economic Interests, and relevant experiences. I would like to strike a resigning board member may nominate a candidate for their replacement. And then under orientation, I had a change that to add and complete required training for new commissioners to comply with statutes. And then finally, under communication, the board shall publicly announce the vacancy and appointment of the new board member through appropriate channels, including the Park District's website and local media. I think the language as it's drafted is too subjective with the use of will. I brought it up at the last meeting. It was laughed off, so I'm making a formal motion to make those changes. I have copies for everyone should they like to see them. But I view this as a pretty consequential decision. I think that it is not appropriate for any wiggle room on will this be an open and fair process for the integrity of our board. And I think that it makes me very uncomfortable if people are just thinking that they're going to appoint and slot in friends to come in. On reflection, I know that you would believe that there was some urgency around doing this because people might be resigning, and I think that it's very important that we have a transparent process with integrity around it, which I think is accomplished by those changes. That one's for Denise because it's highlighted.
This is your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
We're voting on the motion that Cynthia has advanced with this language. This would be a roll call vote.
Yes, Eric has her.
Yes, there's 2 pages.
Here, there's
Yeah.
more stuff.
Thank you.
Sorry.
This is not the final vote. This is whether or
This is not the
we're
final vote.
modifying the
This is
resolution we
draft.
voted upon.
This is changing the language.
May I please make a comment?
Sure.
This language was discussed at length during our September meeting, and in fact, I handed around a revised language that is identical to this for your consideration.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any additional discussion? Yes.
So just to help me think about this, can you elaborate on shall versus will in a little more detail for me?
Is that to add?
Excuse me?
Was that to add?
No, that's my question to
Oh.
Cynthia.
I feel like
I don't get, maybe I'm ignorant. I don't get it. So if you can just explain to me, that'd be great.
It's much stronger. Will is a little bit wishy-washy. When something says shall, as we learned when we have modified policies previously, it's much stronger and is clear that you're doing that. It's not, oh, we will, or maybe, or like the language is not, in my opinion, clear enough as it is. Shall is much stronger from a legal standpoint and from a policy standpoint.
Thank you.
Can we get our counselor's opinion on that?
Yes.
As an attorney, I am as guilty as anyone else of using legalese, and I make an effort to avoid it when I can, speak in plain English. And I think that will and shall are synonyms for each other, but people tend to use the word will in everyday communication and everyday conversation, which is why the policy says will. Substantively, I think they're the same.
Any other discussion items?
I feel very strongly it should be shall for the integrity of our board.
Yes.
I think the addition proposed to include requirement of filling out the Cook County Statement of Economic Interests is appropriate. I don't think it is necessary to preclude a resigning board member from nominating a candidate for their replacement. Anybody can effectively nominate a replacement candidate. Doesn't mean it'll occur. And I think with respect to orientation, we already have orientation policies for new board members. So I don't think there's any change there, and I think will is fine.
Yes.
Again, you had indicated that this was a matter of urgency, that you anticipated, as I recall, that you might have 2 resignations. And this should be, in my opinion, an open process, which means there should not be bias or influence by a sitting commissioner. So I feel very strongly that a resigning board member should, if they're resigning, they walk away, they let the process work through the community fairly. And I'm very pleased to see the notice that we'll provide to the community so that we encourage interested parties to come forward. Thank you.
I have 2 comments. One, I believe that the Cook County Statement of Economic Interest is a confidential, well, it's a public document. I believe it's appropriate that it is filed when someone is elected. It is not a condition of consideration for this position. It was never a consideration for you when you were elected. You were chosen to fill a vacant seat. It was not a condition for David Seaman to fill John Peterson's seat. So I think that is could be very prejudicial. So I'd like to keep that as a requirement for all publicly elected officials in the cycle, in the appropriate time of the cycle of the election. Number 2, I think that a resigning board member may nominate a candidate. It doesn't mean that it is the only candidate that will be nominated. The process as described is public. The nomination process and the application process is public, but a resigning board member may nominate a candidate for their replacement. I believe very strongly that they know the requirements of the job, and if they know someone, they can nominate them. I nominated you. Colleen Knapp, supported your nomination. That would directly have affected your ability to be on this board. So I think sometimes people on this board know the qualities that they're trying to fill, and they know the tenor of the people that they want. And so I think a resigning, I don't mind changing will to shall if you feel it's clearer, but the other 2 changes I disagree with. So now we vote. Colleen, you've had 3 chances to respond. Yes.
Well, I just want to clarify one thing. This is talking about the resigning board member nominating.
Correct.
What happened with Cynthia and David, you were on the board. You were not leaving the board.
Right.
So, again, I think as board members that continue
My point is,
on,
it wasn't exclusive.
I
It wasn't
understand that.
exclusive.
But this smacks, even though it may not be intended as such, it smacks of cronyism. And in my opinion, it is inappropriate to have the language.
Okay. I think we've had enough discussion on this topic. So we're voting now on the motion of Cynthia's proposed language.
The amendments?
All of it. All of it or none of it. Okay.
Do I need to make
That's-
a motion to amend?
I think you made a motion and Commissioner Root seconded it.
So
Yeah.
let's vote on the amendment.
Let's vote on the amendment, and then we can take up another round.
Commissioner Rapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Root?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
No.
Commissioner James?
No.
Commissioner Lesson?
No.
Commissioner Kodo?
No.
That motion fails.
Okay. Do you want to advance another motion for a partial amendment? For will to shall?
I'd like to make another motion to change shall under selection of replacement Part A. The board president shall announce the vacancy. Under Part C, the board shall open a call for nominations, and then changing if to when the board invites nominations, interested candidates must submit a statement of interest, qualifications, and relevant experience. And then public announcement, the board shall publicly announce the vacancy and appointment of the new board member through appropriate channels, including the Park District's website. and
Can I get a
local media.
clarification? Because you did not read the rest of C. A resigning board member may nominate a candidate for their replacement. Was that your intent to leave that out? Because we just voted on that.
We have it in already, so it's not a change from what's in the.
Okay, but you didn't read it, you stopped short of that, so I just want, that's what I see.
Because the changes are the shall and the when.
That's all, okay.
There's
Substitute.
1, 2, 3 shalls in Section A under selection of replacement, in Section C under nomination and application process, and in item A under communication. All those wills are changed to shall. Number 2, the change is under C, nomination and application process, if at the end of the first line changes to when. That motion is on the table. May I have a second?
Second.
Denise, that's a roll call vote.
Commissioner Root?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Lesson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Kodo?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Excellent. So, moving on to item
We
5.3.
have to vote on it now.
Oh, sorry, now we're voting on the original. Thank you very much. May I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-09-26-01, updating Section 4.12 of the Policy Manual as amended? Correct?
So, second.
No, we have a motion already.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Second. Any discussion of this? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Lesson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Root?
Yes.
Commissioner Kodo?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you. Now moving on to item 5.3, Crow Island Woods Restoration. Costa.
Thank you. Circling back on this item was brought before the board on a couple different occasions. Lastly, on September 12th, where the board gave direction to staff to source a third-party consultant to help with an understanding and review of the Crow Island site as it was affected by the stormwater construction project through the village of Winnetka. The consultant that was selected was GEI Consultants out of Chicago, Illinois. We completed, Shannon and I met with Patrick Ching from GEI Consultants on September 23rd, 2024 to not only walk the site, but that same day Patrick did take soil samples from the site as well, one in each one of the areas of disturbance. Those areas include the construction conveyance area for the underground storage, the conveyance path, as well as the laydown yard. The report is dated October 9th, 2024. That's in the packet on page 141. The report itself goes through and reviews the site conditions, the project understanding, the site walkthrough, the soil sampling, how they completed that. Then they went ahead and completed soil testing based on the standards and the pH values that were in accordance with our discussions as part of our contract we had set forward. and those values are shown here, sample 1, 2, and 3. The biggest thing that a lot of people are going to lend their information towards, or the understanding, was the material that was found on site. The deleterious materials that are shown in the packet on page 151, 150, apologize, shown on several of the pages as it relates to soil sample, pages 147, 149, and 151 of the packet. Those samples came up with materials percentage base of 3.8 in sample 1 of glass and other debris of that, the deleterious materials. Our sample 2 came up with 4.7%, and sample 3 was at 6.2. Once again, as the images were shown in there and what was identified, that was the concern that was brought forward by the Park District back to the village. Based on the review that GEI completed of the contract and the standards that were put in place with the Park District, as well as the information on what the intended use and options are for the site for completion, being a public park that is utilized by families and the community for several different events. They put forward a recommendation to remove the top 12 inches of soil from the site. As part of that removal, they also identified that a technician from their company come out and identify any below surface obstructions greater than 4 inch at the 12-inch surface as well, and remove those in addition to. From there, they would suggest to proof roll the subsoil to make sure that it's suitable for the conditions for the follow-up seeding or sodding as discussed, and complete that as part of the standards as far as identified in the report. That's to provide proper root zone and growing habits for the soil. At this point in time, quick review. Financial impact right now is just for the study. We have been able to maintain some of the Coral Island rentals. We have, they've declined a little bit, but most people can utilize the space that's still there this fall for their various, events. As we move forward, staff would like to get further direction from the park board this evening. Have you deliberate as far as directions to move forward. Right now, staff is suggests that our park board liaisons as well as village or park district staff re-engage with the village liaisons and village staff to move forward with the next steps on how to address this matter.
May I have a motion to direct staff and the commissioner liaison to the Village of Winnetka to meet with the village to request the recommendations as presented in the report from GEI Consultants to remedy the concerns at Crow Island Woods?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, now we'll take discussion. I just wanted to, can I start by saying one thing about the conversations that I have had with schools and with the village subsequent to this? The schools are in a similar situation, and they have undertaken a similar process. So they have also engaged a consultant. So the current thinking is that the 3 staff members at each of the taxing bodies, Jim Bernal, Costa Gatulas, and I believe Adam, thank you, Revenport, from the schools, together with the executive directors, Bayhan, Tess, and Nizal, work together to achieve a solution, as opposed to having non-technical experts, such as commissioners, involved in the process. If we need to amend this motion, I just wanted to articulate that as experts in the room solving the problem, all 3 parties together. That was the more recent suggestion. Go ahead.
I'm not sure why we're voting on a motion at this time. I agree that staff should meet with, our staff should meet with schools and the village. Schools may have a different expert opinion, but I don't think we should do anything less than what is recommended by our consultant, but the treatment should be the same. There are 3 separate areas. Crow Island School, the berm south of the school, Crow Island Park, which is the area that Costa described, and then Euclid Avenue right-of-way extending to Sunset. So there are 3 separate areas owned by School District 36, Park District, and Village of Winnetka. I think we should put our heads together, get a single solution for all 3 sites, and proceed on that basis. I would add that I hope that this can be done expeditiously. It's been 5 months since this condition was first observed, and I think the public deserves a prompt response and remediation.
Okay, so I think I would like to ask for an amended motion. Is there any additional discussion? Any other? Okay. I would like to ask for an amended motion. May I have a motion to direct staff and I'm striking commissioner liaison. To meet with the village and schools to request the recommendation as presented in the report from GEI Consultants to remedy the concerns at Crow Island Woods. Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. And that's a vote. Yes. Discussion?
I just had a question. I mean, it seemed like for the prior proposal that there was the cost of the sod. Are we anticipating this is something that would need to be running through the village budget process? Because their presentation is on November 1st, which is not a lot of time, or is it anticipated that it's a change order and they're part of their contingency? And I mean, like, it needs to be fixed. I just want to make sure that we have a smooth path to get it resolved.
May I amend the motion?
Sure.
I'd like to amend the motion so that it reflects that we will take the superset of recommendations. We will not do anything less than what our consultant recommended, but we take into consideration what the school district's expert recommends and what the village recommends. I think the inclusion of sod in lieu of seed, given the time of year, it really is a function of how quickly can we get this work done. But in any event, I think we should be looking at sod so as not to further delay the use of that park by another season.
So this motion is to direct staff. It's not a means and methods motion.
It's to direct staff, but the staff should meet and accept nothing less than, but maybe more than, what's recommended by our experts.
Okay.
I just want to see Crow Island Woods open.
I got it.
I just want to be able to camp there in the spring.
I got it. Okay. So we have an amended motion that's very specific. Denise, I hope you've taken careful notes of that amended motion. Excellent. Do we have a second?
Second.
Excellent. Roll call vote on the amended motion.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Lesson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Root?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cotto?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Excellent. Do we need to clean up any other votes or dismissals of previous motions made? No, I don't think so.
Expressed your intent.
Excellent. Okay. Item number,
Do we need to vote on the main motion? Is that the amendment or is that as amended?
as amended. As amended. Okay. Item number 5.4, Elder and Centennial Park and Beach Projects Update. We'll start with Costa and then we'll circle back to item 4.2, which is Commissioner Response to Zoning Board of Appeals. That will be Warren.
President Cotto, thank you very much. As the board is aware, staff and consultants presented to the zoning board for the Centennial Park Beach project on October 14th. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of review. I think that I want to commend the village and the team. They did an excellent job of preparing information to educate and inform the zoning board of the requests by the Park District. And then our consultants, along with Shannon, Christina, Adam, and myself, on presenting our presentation of those findings to support our project. As we moved forward through the review of that evening, there was an abundance of public comment as well, and review of public comment, along with review of more tangible comments that were made by the zoning board members between the chair and other members. That information was distilled down by staff, reviewed, pending a later date, in this case, the November 11th zoning board meeting, when that will be readdressed. Staff has been working on responding to the comments as they were deliberated on that evening, and we also took the comments as understood by village staff and overlaid them on our comments, which they matched up pretty well. As we continue on, there was a couple comments that were addressed that evening around things outside of the zoning's review. I think both Peter and Adam agreed to those that they're not the preview of the zoning board, so we will not be responding to those questions at this time. We will be responding back to the relevant items as requested by the zoning board, not only in writing, but also in our presentation on the 11th. We're hopeful that our review and understanding of those questions and our presentation on the 11th can give greater insight to the Zoning Board of Appeals to give them clarity on how to go ahead and move forward with this project. Once again, we can only best present our case to the board, the zoning board in this case, and based on that information, they'll render a decision on how to move forward. We're hopeful that we can have their support to move on to the next phase, which would be the planning board or the planning commission, but at this time it's unknown. So we're going to continue moving forward with our efforts to prepare for the November 11th zoning board meeting. That's at 7 p.m. at 510 Green Bay Road, and continue to move on that front. Before I move into Elder, are there any questions or comments as it relates to Centennial Project and where that stands to date?
So to clarify, I have prepared remarks for the zoning, and I have prepared remarks to address a caucus question regarding conditions precedent for reopening Elder. So I'll start by, I watched the meeting, I did not attend, and as you know, I've been in the real estate development business for 37 years, so I've been to many of these types of hearings. The application of residential zoning standards to public property is inappropriate. New Trier High School, the Winnetka Power Plant, A.C. Nielsen Tennis Center, and the Winnetka Municipal Maintenance Facility are examples of existing public structures that far exceed the residential design limits. All have been granted relief from the underlying residential zoning districts, recognizing the fundamental distinction between public and private uses. Each of the four other Winnetka Park District beaches, Tower, Lloyd, Maple, and Centennial, and Elder, have access roads allowing beachgoers and Park District personnel to access the beach with a motor vehicle, and those access roads are not in compliance with the steep slope ordinance. Each of the four other Winnetka Park District beaches have structures at the beach level to serve the public interest that are not in compliance with the newly enacted steep slope ordinance. ADA compliance at Elder is accomplished by virtue of a single parking space at the bottom of a steep slope, requiring a patron to call ahead to unlock the access gate, not in keeping with the principle of universal design, and limiting the number of patrons with special needs that can access the beach. The Winnetka Park District has a basic duty to the public to provide ADA compliant, emergency, and maintenance access to its beaches, including Centennial Park, regardless of the application of the steep slope ordinance. To decide otherwise is to invite a discrimination complaint against the Village of Winnetka for violation of the ADA. Centennial Beach has been fenced, gated, and locked since 1995 with the introduction of the dog beach. At 520 feet, Centennial Beach represents 21% of the usable beachfront in Winnetka. The average number of resident dog beach pass holders over a 10-year period was 305, representing less than 7% of the households in the Winnetka Park District. The spirit and intent of the public trust doctrine is to allow the public access to the beaches, One of the primary objectives of the plan is to provide public access to Centennial Beach by relocating the Dog Beach gated access to the boardwalk level. In October of 22 years ago, the Winnetka Park District, after many meetings and hours upon hours of public input, voted unanimously to amend the Lakefront Master Plan to include Dog Beach in its current location at the south end of Centennial Park. The motion as passed states that the Dog Beach should occupy not more than 270 feet and not less than 170 feet of shoreline and allow pedestrians to bypass the Dog Beach. Both objectives are achieved by the proposed plan. In October of 2022, the Winnetka Park District, recognizing that Centennial Park was unique among the 5 Winnetka beaches, voted unanimously to construct an ADA accessible pathway from Sheridan Road to the beach, an objective achieved by the proposed plan. As proposed, Centennial Beach is the only Winnetka Park District beach that does not allow the general public to access the beach level by motor vehicle, a demonstration of the WPD intent to minimize the impact of improvements while still adhering to the best practices with respect to ADA design and accommodating the necessary emergency and maintenance access. Centennial Bluff is not natural. It collapsed into the lake during the high water period, peaking in 1987, and was subsequently rebuilt in keeping with the HARSA engineering plans approved in April of 1987. Centennial Bluff is presently populated by volunteer growth, much of which is classified as invasive species that blocks views of the lake in contradiction of the objectives set forth in the Lakefront Master Plan. The plans as proposed have been carefully designed by professional engineers, planners, coastal and bluff restoration experts to eliminate the risk of erosion. The proposed pier at Centennial provides ADA accessible vantage point to enjoy unencumbered views of the lake, an objective of the Lakefront Master Plan. The proposed pier at Centennial extends no further into the lake than the existing steel sheet pile jetties at Elder Lane Beach. The proposed pier at Centennial Beach is virtually the same height as the existing pier at Elder, which does not obstruct panoramic views of the lake. By comparison, the proposed pier at Centennial Beach is both shorter and has less surface area than the existing pier at Maple Beach. The proposed pier at Centennial Beach properly separates human use from dog use of the beaches and will not allow water to migrate through the pier, differentiating it from either the existing pier at Elder or a typical rubble mound breakwater. The use of armor stone around the proposed pier at Centennial serves multiple purposes. It dissipates wave energy, arrests rip currents, retains sand, while creating an open and obvious prohibition of jumping or diving from the pier, thereby enhancing safety of the structure. The fence at the south end of the Dog Beach will in all cases be lower than the adjacent stone groin, thus it will not create any additional obstruction of views of the lake. The description of a 10-foot fence in a front yard is a tortured interpretation of the proposed 42-inch railing required by code at the edge of the boardwalk, which itself is approximately 4 feet above the new beach elevation. Would also like to dispel some misinformation offered by members of the public during the ZBA public hearing in 10/14/24. The current lake level is about average. More specifically, on Friday, October 18, 2024, the Army Corps of Engineers weekly update shows Lake Michigan water level at 578.74, just 3 inches below the long-term monthly average. The use of stone groins to arrest rip currents and littoral drift is an accepted practice worldwide. In fact, without such groins, there would be little, if any, beach at Elder and Centennial and greater risk of rip currents. The Centennial Pier would be the only pier along the 1,000-foot stretch of beach between the south end of Centennial and the north end of Elder, contradicting public comments previously made. Finally, continuous public pedestrian access along the south end of Centennial, excuse me, I missed something here. continuous public pedestrian access along the south of Centennial Beach, affording appropriate access to the steps up and over Orchard 2020 Stone Groin, has been provided in the proposed plan. The presentation offered at the ZBA suggesting otherwise is similar in content to a presentation that was previously submitted to the Village of Winnetka and the Winnetka Park District. A rebuttal to the misinterpretation of the plans was submitted on September 12, 2024, to which there has been no reply. The two key issues are these. One, accreted sand on the north side of the Stone Groin is public property. Number two, the lateral distance between the top of the steel and the adjacent stone at the same elevation is greater than 6 feet, affording suitable access to the steps up and over the Stone Groin. Two final comments. First, regarding the Elder storm sewer outfall. The removal and replacement of the Elder Pier is both necessary and appropriate. By so doing, Elder Lane Beach, which is presently divided into 3 parts, will become a single continuous beach. The replacement and relocation of the stormwater outfall presently located beneath Elder Pier will move the stormwater discharge further north and farther into the lake, distancing it from the proposed swimming beach at Centennial. As noted earlier this evening, the existing, well, it was going to be earlier, but now it's going to be later, the existing 54-inch corrugated metal pipe beneath the pier is rusting and failing, causing chunks of metal to wash ashore at Elder Beach. The existing 75 and 100-year-old storm sewers between Sheridan Road and the Elder Bluff lie 15 feet below the surface of the ground, adjacent to many mature trees. Replacing those pipes in their current location would be devastating to the environment, and it would destroy the existing improvements. The relocation and replacement of the storm sewer as proposed in the current permit application for Elder is in keeping with the prior plans that were prepared by the Park District in collaboration with the village 2.5 years ago. No surprise there, none of the parameters have changed, thus the optimal solution remains the same. I'd also like to note that the consulting engineer on behalf of the village, Mike Waldron, who is a brilliant and capable man, recently offered his formal opinion to the Village of Winnetka that the location and size of the storm sewer outfall pipes as proposed by the Winnetka Park District are appropriate. Second, there have been some references to a recently completed shoreline protection project at Illinois Beach State Park. The state of Illinois spent approximately $73 million to protect 4,000 feet of natural shoreline, a cost of $18,250,000 per 1,000 feet of protection. These rubble mounds, sometimes referred to as offshore reefs, are located 300 to 500 feet offshore, much further into the lake than anything proposed by the Winnetka Park District. The project remains a test case to determine the efficacy of the approach, and the WPD and the village will be well served to monitor the performance of the improvements. Regarding the future unification of Elder and Centennial beaches, the current plan for Elder proposes to leave the existing steel groin at the south side of Elder in place, but to add armor stone along the north side to dissipate wave energy, arrest rip currents, and hold more sand. If the ultimate goal of the unification of Elder and Centennial is realized, the steel jetty could be removed and the stone could be reused to create offshore reefs or rubble mound breakwaters to help sustain more beach. In all cases, the bluff will be protected by the steel sheet pile bulkheads existing and proposed, while the amount of usable beach will be determined by the configuration and extent of the breakwaters. The Park District amended its plans to conform with the recently acted village ordinances prioritizing panoramic views over beach preservation, which is why the Headland Beach system, similar to Lloyd, was abandoned in the current plans. Thank you for indulging.
That's great.
You got it on?
I would like to suggest.
Put it on the agenda.
We could-
You got your approvals that we heard you. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest that we can either put this in to the record, I can do it individually, or we can incorporate these responses into the comprehensive response by the Park District.
They're definitely in the record since you've just read them in. Do you have additional parts of this presentation that you want to split in after Costa speaks?
Yeah, I want to discuss the caucus issue of reopening Elder separately. That's what it has to put on the agenda.
Okay, that's,
That'll be after everybody else comments on the CBA.
perfect, okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I ask a question about Commissioner James' presentation?
Sure.
You made a comment about the access as we head south from Centennial onto 205 and indicated this was accreted sand. I have a question both for you, President Cotto, and for Park Council. Have we made any overture to the owner of 205 Sheridan to see if we could simply secure an easement agreement where the owner would agree that yes, this is indeed public beach and the public can walk across until they get to the stone stairways on 205 Sheridan. I think that would go a long way to help the community feel a bit better about that.
The question was the
Adam,
overture made?
why don't you respond, Adam? I don't see.
We've had no negotiations that members of the board are not aware of.
Yes.
Again, just looking at legal invoices, I see you had a discussion with counsel representing the owner of 205 on this specific issue.
No.
Okay.
I've had conversations with Mr. Williams about things because we're neighbors, but we've had no negotiations at all.
Not negotiations, but your specific entry said in response to Mr. Dowding's presentation, where he was raising the question and issue. I guess this is a commissioner comment. Just seems to me one way you solve this is there's an easement agreement that is offered by the owner of 205 Sheridan.
I don't disagree, but I would suggest that first you got to make a determination that it's his property, because I don't think unless there's a quit claim or something, because I don't think it's his property.
What we have learned, and I'll conclude
Yeah.
very quickly, what we have learned is it is oftentimes better to work these things out, have an agreement that is then recorded, and you're done. So you don't have any questions.
Thank you. I think Costa now has the rest of his presentation with regard to Elder. And I think the second part of your conversation.
President Cotto, thank you. As discussed previously, Elder Lane Park Beach and Project has been submitted to the village back in September 16th. I will note there should have been a correction to this memo, and I apologize. That was my mistake, not updating this memo accordingly. Staff did receive comment back from the village in response to the initial submittal back from September 16th on October 18th. So staff had the opportunity to receive that to date. So thank you to the village staff for their, once again, very thorough review. As part of that review, staff went ahead and reviewed those comments. There was a few items of clarification that needed to be requested, and today staff was able to sit down with staff to review some of those clarification items as we prepare our response, which we're trying to get back to village by November 4th. In doing so, that would allow us to move forward with and hopefully have everything prepared in time for the potential December or January zoning board meeting for Elder. None of that has been affirmed, but right now that's our best guess scenario based on our timeline. I'd like to just indicate that some of the concerns and questions around the pier and the stormwater pipe, once again, we're still waiting on further information that's forthcoming from the village in regards to their study. I'll leave that alone at this time. I know staff has been working with the village to try to pursue or advance the discussions around the IGA, and I know conversations are happening on that front as well. So staff is being diligent on that notion and has been in our conversations with Rob and trying to get that solidified as well. Other than that, the one, I'm going to sound like a broken record here though, we continue to keep working through this process, and at some point we are going to get to a point where 2025 is no longer viable for construction and it's going to be moved into 2026. Right now, with the things as they have been progressing through the first steps of the special use permit process, I would say that that's not necessarily a certainty at this time, but it's growing ever so clear that that's probably going to be a high probability. So just be aware of that. The other thing I just wanted to know quickly, the board did ask for a update, constant running total of the project. To date, the Breakwater project with soft costs, these are contractors, the contracts that have already been agreed upon, has spent to date $682,361 and change towards the both Elder and Centennial project, with an additional $16,326 and change for legal fees as it relates to litigation or FOIA requests on that project. The total for the combined 2024 to date, $698,688.07. Is there any questions that the board has that I can answer at this time? Thank you.
Thank you. Very complete. Thank you. And this is the second part of Warren's agenda item. I think you split it into two parts. Warren? Okay, go ahead.
Taylor, I'm going to call the presentation. Thank you. There's been a lot. There's been a lot of conversation about and a sense of urgency to reopening Elder. I share that. I'd like nothing more than to see Elder Lane Beach reopened for public use. I think it's important that we understand the reasons why it continues to be closed. Picture says 1,000 words, so here goes. The Elder Lane Beach Pier was originally constructed in 1947. It has outlived its useful life. The pier is owned by the Winnetka Park District. The pipe inside of it is owned and operated by the village of Winnetka. The end section of the pier is badly damaged by decades of pounding waves and ice. The 54-inch diameter pipe inside the pier is the primary storm sewer discharge for 300+ acres of southeast Winnetka. The pipe is rusting and is beyond its useful life. A rusted section of the pipe broke off and washed ashore several years ago during a storm. Other parts of corrugated metal pipe have been and continue to be found on the lake bed near the pier, creating unsafe conditions. I took this picture on Sunday. You can see vaguely sand covering a piece of corrugated metal. Matt Barton took this picture on Monday. We believe it's the same piece of metal resting on a lake. Neither of us had ever seen it before. The fact is that the sand is constantly shifting. We don't know how much metal is out there under the sand, but this clearly constitutes an unsafe condition for swimmers. Another picture taken in February of 2024 shows smaller chunks of corrugated metal from the storm sewer along with a metal pole of unknown origin. The steel grate from the outer end of the pier broke off and appeared along the south side of the pier, as shown in this picture taken on Sunday, this past Sunday in October. A close-up view shows the 10-foot by 4-foot approximate metal grate with chunks of concrete, and it reveals the inherent hazard to swimmers. I've never seen that section before. Costa, have you? Till Sunday?
Not today, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been buried and now it's revealing itself. Only recently, another section of precast concrete was discovered on the south side of the pier. Wave energy moves the debris and shifting sands alternately cover and reveal the hazards. It's believed that this precast concrete is from a concrete ramp constructed in 1987 as shown on the Harza engineering plans. The Harza plans show 9 of these sections. I'm only aware that we've recovered 3. Costa, do you know if we've recovered more than 3 of these sections?
The only ones that were removed is when we had a excavator out there trying to pull as much as we can from the beach. So it should be the 3 sections.
The Park District has endeavored to clean up the beach, removing large quantities of broken concrete and other debris. These pictures were taken in June of 2023, but due to the equipment size limitations and water depth, we were unable to identify, reach, and remove all of the debris. This is, you can see, rebar and broken concrete. There's a couple of the other precast sections of concrete that were carried out, the old volleyball support and other debris. I believe that rectangular section, not the precast panels, might be part of the support structure for that old ramp. And here's another picture of the broken debris, the broken concrete that was pulled out, placed in the dumpster. So the Winnetka Park District determined to remove and replace the pier and the stormwater outfall in the Lakefront Master Plan approved in 2016. The Winnetka Park District, working in collaboration with the Village of Winnetka, agreed to the plan and approach to the removal of the pier and replacement of the storm sewer in the spring of 2022, as evidenced by Village Engineer James Burnell signing the permit application to the MWRD. 2.5 years later, the WPD is right back to where it was in the spring of 2022. Remove the pier, replace the storm sewer as proposed by the WPD in our current plans presently submitted for permit to the Village of Winnetka. I'll add, the fastest and most efficient way to reopen Elder is for the Village and the Winnetka Park District to enter into an intergovernmental agreement, apply for permits to the MWRD, IDNR, and Army Corps of Engineers, and complete the improvements as proposed in the current permit application pending before the Village of Winnetka. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Those pictures are very compelling. Moving on to item number 6.
Pardon me?
Yes.
I have a comment.
Sure.
Elder Lane has been closed for 4 seasons. And again, we are in the beginning of a permit process. I'm listened intently to Costa tonight saying the construction may not begin in 2025. Since my tenure on this board, I have heard from Commissioner James that the Elder Lane Pier is extremely dangerous. Yet, I happen to remember that last October, October 9th, our technical expert, Matthew Wright of Red Barn Engineering, prepared for this district a peer assessment report. And what is very interesting as I found this report is his conclusion was the pier structure shows no sign of settlement, deflection, horizontal movement, or failure. The structure members remain fastened within the pier entirely with no failure between the individual pier members or any other structural failures throughout the individual members. He concludes that there are no cracks or other structural failures that are noted, and his ultimate conclusion is that the pier itself, if I can get to my the pier is an aging structure. At this time, I see no remedial actions required for this pier. He then provided 3 options for repair of the pier. And as far as the east end that we're looking at right now, that option, he was proposing that a reasonable cost to fix that would be in the range of $80,000. So I'm going to pass this report, if I might, down to Denise Kaufman, and I would ask that she place it within the board packet so that the public can also review this. And again, we're kind of in this, just almost like in suspension here. It would be a real shame if here we come to 2025 and Elder Lane Beach is still closed. So I don't know what it takes to repair. I don't know how much it would cost to repair. I know Elder Lane has seen virtually, and this is no reflection, Costa, on you and your team, it's absolutely seen no maintenance at all. This beach has been able to just deteriorate in the past 4 years. Thank you.
So I have two, I'd like to ask Costa to respond first, because if I recall Matt Wright's study correctly, he did not have divers, he did not have scuba work, he did surface assessment.
That is correct. That is correct. It was a visual assessment of the pier from the surface itself, not from the water, in the water, or any subsurface views, in this case divers or anything to explore the pier at a deeper level. I also like to note that the approximated cost was in conjunction with us completing the project, so it wasn't an ancillary cost of a standalone by itself. It was part of conjunction with the larger project.
It was an incremental cost. Exactly.
Mobilization and everything else would drive that 80,000 number up quite exponentially.
Yeah, because you'd have to articulate all the other costs just
mobilizing the equipment alone.
Just for the 80,000 repair. Okay. Warren, itching to speak. Go ahead.
The Park District voted and approved the plans and has spent considerable sums to advance the plans for Elder, the improvements to Elder. We should not be relitigating the decision to remove the pier. The direction from the village has changed substantially. First, they said, we've inspected the pipe and we're okay with it. But I'm going to go back to my prior comments. The storm sewer that runs between Sheridan Road to the bluff, that then makes its way down into the pier, 75 and 100 years old. It's undersized. It's beneath mature trees. It's 15 feet deep. You cannot remove and replace those pipes without doing extraordinary damage to the trees and to the existing improvements. The pipe beneath the pier, while some might suggest it could be lined, it doesn't address the fact that we are seeing chunks of corrugated metal pipe show up in the lake bed. You can't get inside that pier and repair it. You could line it from the inside, and that's going to reduce the effective diameter. The village has come back to us, and they've said, we're okay with removing the pier. We waited for Strand to do its analysis, and they came back and they said that the location and size as proposed by the Park District are appropriate. It's the same team that went through this exercise 2.5 years ago. The trees haven't moved, the pipe hasn't magically healed itself, and the pipes underneath the park haven't grown in size. All the parameters remain the same. 5 different engineers. Jim Bernal, village engineer, Mike Waldron from Strand, Matt Wright from Red Barn Engineering, Bill Loftus from Spaceco, and what's that? And Thomas Burke of CBEL. They all collaborated to arrive at the proposed solution. We have an exceptional team. They've landed on the most appropriate solution, and I believe that given the consensus that we could move this thing forward and get the work done next year. I don't think Elder should be deemed controversial. At this point, everybody's agreed. We just have to enter into an IGA, determine the appropriate connection, and move forward. Let's go.
Any other additional comments?
I just have a question, knowing that we will be considering the recreation budget for discussion next time, and to put the question to staff about the feasibility of at least opening the bathrooms at Elder so that parkland and that space can be used more fully for events and also for the convenience of the public, because I didn't see anything in this that
precludes the bathrooms and some of those other facilities from opening. So if a little bit of consideration with fresh eyes could be given to that, I think that would be helpful, and I think it would be something that would be viewed very positively with the community. I'm very sensitive to the fact that we continue to, we have Crow Island Woods not functioning at 100%. We have Elder not functioning at 100%. It's controversial to push it to 100%, but I do think that we could at least make an improvement over where we are now in terms of the functionality of that park, which would probably be welcomed by the community. So, thank you.
Eric, any comments?
The thought that just continues to go through my mind as you think about summer 25, if, I wouldn't let my children anywhere near that situation out in the water, and I hope nobody else does either. Alternatively, maybe you just take down the fence at the dog beach and you open up Centennial for swimmers. But there's probably stuff there too, right?
There's way more debris at Centennial. It's shown in the survey. Absolutely no swimming at Centennial. Don't even consider it. That beach needs to be scoured.
Yeah.
Costa, back me up.
7 years of this stuff, it all blends together.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff?
Nothing
Any
to-
comments? Okay. Warren, you've made comments? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to item number 6, new business. 6.1, personnel policy manual update. Beth?
Thank you. So I'm bringing forward the Personnel Policy Manual for review and discussion. The entire policy manual was reviewed by Ansel Blink. The main changes are related to legislative updates and language clarification. Policies that needed to be put in place in order to qualify for the Distinguished Agency Accreditation, and then trying to have continued Park District competitiveness. So the legislative updates that were made were to the Equal Employment Opportunity Statement, Genetic Information Privacy Act, Employment of Minors, Personnel Records, and the Victims Economic Security and Safety Act. Language clarification. There's a lot of language clarification, so I couldn't actually spell out every policy, so some of it is just the main section. At-will employment, non-discrimination and anti-harassment, reasonable accommodations, nursing mothers in the workplace, whistleblower reporting and anti-retaliation, identity protection, employment and compensation section, safety in the workplace section, guidelines for employee conduct, use of Park District information, property and equipment, and employee benefits. The policies that needed to be put in place to qualify for Distinguished Agency Accreditation, we've always followed the American Disabilities Act. We just didn't have it spelled out in a policy. We had policies related to reasonable accommodation, which go with Americans Disabilities Act. They require an actual written policy, so that was added. We needed a policy on how we distribute the personnel policy manual. We've always followed new hire reporting. We just didn't spell it out in a policy. It's a law we have to follow. But they wanted specifically how do we go about doing that. And then another policy on employment of certified professionally trained staff. And then finally, in terms of being competitive, I'm asking for changes for the holiday policy in 2 different ways. One, proposing the addition of 2 additional holidays, Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth for full-time staff. And then proposing the addition of time and a half
for staff that are required to work on a holiday. We are the only park district in the area that does not pay time and a half for working a holiday. So what this would entail is full-time employees would get paid time and a half. Again, if they're required to work the designated holidays. And then they can either choose to take the holiday on another day or choose to be paid 8 hours of straight time in place of taking a day. Most of our holidays, full-time staff take the day. 4th of July is an exception. There are a lot of staff who work 4th of July. Our other holidays are covered by seasonal and part-time staff. And then adding for part-time employees, paying them time and a half for working the 6 major holidays. That's usually when people want to spend time with their family. And so it would be nice, one, to be able to incentivize people to work on a holiday, the major holidays, and to compensate them fairly for working on a holiday. So the main holidays are New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day. Now, some of our facilities are closed on these days, so no staff would be working. And then the approximate annual cost would be about $43,000. Again, it's hard to predict because you don't know the hourly income of who will work. So, but that was our best estimate. So, any questions?
May I have a motion?
May I have a motion to adopt the proposed changes to the Personnel Policy Manual and Resolution 2024-10-24-01?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any additional discussion?
There were 2 sections that I had some issues with. One was the at-will employment. I know that there were emails circulated around with some of my questions around that. And then in the final sentence, which I know Beth kept kind of as it was in the earlier draft. But I would say that for senior employees, like Shannon had said that she was the only employee who was not at will and working under a contract. And I feel pretty strongly that should be a decision of the board in benchmarking. I would note that D36, all of their senior employees are approved by the board, for staff positions or principal positions. And then I presume that the village has some kind of approval process because I see annual evidence that compensation for their senior team and bonuses are approved by the full council. So that section, I have a motion to change the last sentence of section 1.2 in the at-will employment, which I will make after I talk about the second section. The second section that I had a challenge with was 2.2.4 under the harassment section for procedures for filing a complaint. I knew that we had an ordinance related to sexual harassment. And so I thought, well, why is the commissioner situation addressed in the personnel policy manual? I agreed with Commissioner Tyson's earlier comment on the August go-round that commissioner behavior thing should not be in the personnel policy manual because we have our own board policy manual and we also have other ordinances. But when I went back and read that ordinance more carefully, in preparing for the meeting, that ordinance actually stipulates the specific language that needs to be in the personnel policy manual verbatim. Like it has, this paragraph should appear. So I have copies that I can share. So I think we want to make sure that the manual and our ordinance are consistent because we are not modifying our ordinance at this time. So I would like to make a motion to amend the personnel policy manual section 1.2, under at-will employment, page 2, the final sentence should be restated as no official supervisor or other employee of the district other than the full board has the authority to alter the at-will status of any position. And then under section 2.2.4, that section needs to be consistent with ordinance 574, signed on February 27th, 2020, section 2, as attached, and that ordinance in section 2 includes the paragraph that must appear. Do I need to read it? I referenced it specifically enough? Okay.
Can you reference that again? Sorry.
It's ordinance 574, and it's in section 2. And I have copies that I can distribute. Let me just make sure, yeah. Okay, of what's current and what's not for people to look at. And I was surprised actually to read that the ordinance was so specific to say this should appear in the personnel policy manual, but there we go. That might be something that could be on our future change. Sorry, it's at the end of my, is everyone, Denise, did you want to make it to you?
Commissioner Rapp,
Yes.
did you find the language in 2.2.4 to omit the language from the ordinance, or? to
It's
conflict?
different.
Sorry.
It's different. The language that's in the manual is different than what's in our ordinance.
Different because it uses different words, or different because it expresses a different substantive result?
It is different in terms of what the reporting person is, as an example. So I think it is substantively different. And I don't think a policy manual change is sufficient to supersede an ordinance.
No, that's right.
Okay.
Can we map to this ordinance and include it and map to all current ordinances?
Yes.
Let's do that. Where's the appropriate place to map this, 2.2.4?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that accomplish your objective? We incorporate it by reference?
No, I think the ordinance is very specific in terms of the language that should appear in there. But it says it's amended to comply with the act by the addition of the following language as a new section of the personnel policy manual. So I think, to me, that's very directive that we need the actual language.
Right. What we've done with ordinances as they're changed is that we simply reference them and map to them.
Personally, I would like to see this ordinance revised and redone to not have any commissioner things in the personnel policy manual and have it referenced in our own board policy manual.
So what we're trying to look at right now is whether this was in the board policy manual rather than the personnel policy, because it wasn't, because it also doesn't say personnel, it says personal. So we're trying to clarify what it actually is in regards to.
So this, I wasn't your counsel when this was adopted, but I remember what the statutory motivation for this was. The state amended one of the ethics laws to require a provision for reporting commissioner on commissioner harassment. It resulted from an incident in real life that they made everyone else's problem. So this was a result of a change of state law, and I can work with staff to identify the law that created this obligation and figure out where it should go.
Okay, so do you want to approve it except for, we'll talk about at-will employment as a separate, but for this ordinance, do you want to take out 2.2.4 and bring that section back for special consideration, for shorter consideration, incorporating this.
I just think we need to be consistent with our ordinance as it stands now, because that's what we're.
And I'm asking procedurally, can we approve, we'll discuss 1.2, which is your other
So
proposal.
you want me to make two separate motions?
No,
Or-
just asking if we take 2.2.4 out of the policy manual, approve the rest after we finish discussing 1.2, and then we'll come back and consider 2.2.4 at a future date. Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And
So
if I recall, the last review, that was in the policy, and it was asked to be removed because it mentioned board members.
No, I know. That's what I mean. I think that there's
Okay.
consensus that we
So-
don't want it in, I think.
That's fine. It seems like that clearly requires more work, more
Yeah, no,
discussion,
it
more
requires more
circulation.
work.
So let's do this. Let's solve at-will employment. We're going to table just 2.2.4 as a section completely. Thank you for this suggestion. And then let's look at at-will employment. I'd like to hear comments from board members with regard to only the full board, not the executive director, can alter the status of an at-will employee. Jeff? Not to put you on the spot. You're to my immediate right. So.
I'm on the spot.
Yeah.
Can we go through an example of what we're talking about here?
Sure. I mean, I think, Adam, do you want to, or Shannon, do you want to, or Beth, do you want to give an example?
So to supersede at will, it means a contract. So you follow a contract in terms of Shannon's employment. We're at will. We can be dismissed at any time for any reason or no reason at all. And employees can resign at any time with no notice for any reason. That's what at will means. This is talking about, and this was just added by the attorneys, it wasn't in there before, of who can change that at-will status.
So an example could be if it was a decision to make other employees contract employees.
That's usually the path it would follow. You would go from at-will to a contract employee. I agree that that should be a decision of the board. Okay. I don't think that the executive director necessarily wants that responsibility for adding contract employees, and the contract would have to be approved by the board anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments on that? Okay. All right, so item 1.2, we're amending to just the full board. We're striking the executive director or. Okay, we're striking executive director or, and item 1.2 on page 2. And then we're removing item 2.2.4 completely for consideration at a later date. Okay.
Compliance with our ordinance, to have a policy manual that's approved that does not.
The existing policy would stand until we come back and reconsider this. This we could do quickly, I believe.
Okay.
Yep. Can I have a motion to approve the policy manual as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Denise, that's a roll call vote.
I'm sorry, what was the motion?
The motion was
Colleen.
Colleen? The second
Commissioner
was
Root. Excuse me.
Eric Lawson. Sorry, Commissioner Lawson.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp? Yes. Commissioner Root?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Koto?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Okay. Executive Director's Report, item number 7.
And I would make one comment that we would bring back that section 2.24 at the November 21st
Perfect.
meeting.
That'll give us time to have a first reading and a second reading. Perfect, okay.
Other than that, you have your weekly status reports, legal expenses, and a golf club update. I also wanted to make note that in public comment, it was mentioned the website for the comprehensive master plan public engagement, and I wanted to correct that website was winpark.org/Plan Winnetka Parks. And that is accurate and does work that we have checked on that to make sure that that is valid.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make note of that for the public.
Okay, good. Commissioner comments? Commissioner James?
I'm going to read something from a letter. It was written by Village Manager Doug Williams in 2010, 14 years ago. Just going to read a brief excerpt of it. This was his farewell address after 17 years serving the village of Winnetka, written 14 years ago. I am, however, concerned about what I perceive to be a rising tide of incivility in our village. I'm concerned that if we don't push back this tide, these altruistic Winnetkins will no longer be willing to volunteer. If the personal attacks keep ramping up, and if outrageous and unfounded conspiracy theories continue to be conjured up, I promise you the pool of civic-minded volunteers will dry up. And if this happens, I worry that Winnetka will end up slating advocates who have an axe to grind, a single-issue agenda, or worse yet, a hidden agenda. To assure a bright and shining future for the village, we must improve the civility of the village discourse of public policy. As individuals, we can stop forwarding emails that contain personal attacks on policymakers. We can tone down the anger that I've seen expressed all too often of late in these council chambers. We can be respectful of others, whether or not we agree with them. And when the decisions are made, we must stop attacking our neighbors who made these decisions in the best interest of the village and move forward. And I was presented with an email tonight from Katie Stevens to Colleen Root. Katie asking for advice from Colleen. Thoughts? I took out collusion and softened it a bit. If you could help me make it better, please. This was a draft letter to the caucus suggesting that there was an improper email correspondence between myself and past Commissioner Teresa Claybrook. I want to note that the emails that I sent to Commissioner Claybrook copied the executive director and the president and contained factual information regarding the current status of the Elder and Centennial plans. There was nothing untoward in there, but I'm going to read that again. I took out collusion and softened it a bit. I'm going to recommend that Katie Stevens appear before this board at the next meeting, and I will have prepared remarks to address her behavior, because this letter was written in 2010, after the village had gone through extraordinary consternation over the post office and over the original plans for One Winnetka. And Katie Stevens was front and center. And Katie, I don't know if you remember, but you asked me for your help to shoot down that post office plan, and I told you no. So I invite you to come so I can speak to your face publicly.
Thank you. Eric?
No
Any
comments,
comments?
Cynthia?
Excellent. Cynthia? Colleen?
I hadn't intended to give comments tonight, but in listening to the former village manager, it appears that it's very sad, because what we saw tonight was an attack by a former park commissioner. And what's so unfortunate again is it appears that Ms. Stevens sent an email to my Wynn Park account that I didn't see, but it was forwarded by the park executive director to members of caucus. Ms. Stevens did call me when she realized that she had sent this email, because it was not to go to me, but rather to another party. And she said she was very sorry that she had made a mistake. I did not discuss this letter. In fact, I never saw this letter that was sent to Mr. Ross or other members of caucus. And so it's somewhat ironic. If someone had actually talked to me about it, I could have explained it. As far as my letter to caucus, this should never have been disclosed to the public. All caucus has precise rules that when someone interviews, that's confidential. Everything that occurs in that interview is supposed to be confidential. Saying it was aired this evening, I will tell you that it was a mistake, an absolute mistake, that Alex Ross, who chairs the Parks Candidate Committee, didn't record my interview. It was an error. And he was just astonished and stunned, and the whole committee that was there, and everybody in the committee was there, except for Ms. Claybrook. So when I was confronted with a request to do another interview, to have it recorded, I realized that would be a violation of the caucus rules. These rules are done not to protect the members of caucus or the committee in caucus, but rather to have a fair and uniform process for all people who are interviewing. So if I had had another opportunity to go in for a second interview, that would have been unfair to the other candidates. And then how do you figure this out? Everyone had their first interview recorded, but then it would be my second interview, so there would not be the same consistency here. I'm sorry this happened this evening. I'm very sorry that Commissioner James saw an opportunity to further attack me. No, you attacked me this evening, as did Ms. Claybrook. And again, all these, I agree, this needs to stop. And one of the ways we stop it is we talk to each other face to face. We don't sabotage a commissioner with a censure that the commissioner has never seen. We don't send emails that the commissioner did not see to members of caucus without talking to the commissioner. I mean, I agree this needs to end. I am now way over my time, so I'll stop, but I do have a question of our president. I'd like to hear how your meeting with Senator Fine went on the beach, if you could share with the board what was discussed and what you did with Senator Fine. Because I've heard round robin that this did occur, and so I think it'd be good for us as a whole board to hear about the session. Thank you.
Jeff?
Nothing to add.
Happy to close out this meeting with, or the public portion of this meeting, with some comments. I was asked by Trustee Bridget Orsick, based on an invitation I extended last November to every single trustee. And I've had meetings with 2 of them, and 3 of them actually, and now Bridget would be the 4th, to show them our beach plans and show them the beach project and to walk through the premises. Laura Fine and I had met, Senator Laura Fine and I had met on a couple of occasions, and we had tried to get together to talk about this project. And we were able to combine the tour together, and that's what we did. I showed her the plans, I walked her through the project. I think seeing the project on the ground is much more informative than seeing it on paper. So it was a beautiful day, and we walked down to take a look, and I think that they appreciated that time. That's it. Without any additional public time, may I have a motion, item number 9, may I have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/section 2C5 for the purchase or lease of property, and 5 ILCS 120/2C6 for the setting of a price for sale or lease of property, and 5 ILCS 120/2C11 for litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent,
So moved.
Second, Eric, thank you. Roll call, Denise.
Commissioner Rapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Root?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Wesson?
Yes.
Commissioner Koto?
Yes.